Mahascharyam Karmani Chagranihinaha Abhimanyu Satam Suta Prahur Bhagavatotamam Tasya Janma Mahascharyam Karmani Chagranihinaha. Word for word.
Let's see if anybody else would like to chant. You can do that.
Okay, right.
Abhimanyu Sutam Suta Prabhurbhaga Bhatottamam Tasya Janma Mahascharyam Karmani Cha Gruhininam Naha Grunihinaha.
Abhimanyu Sutam Suta Prabhurbhagavatotamam Tasya Janma Mahascharyam Karmani Cha Grahinina.
Abhimanyu Sutang Suta Prahur Bhagavatottamam Tasya Janma Mahascharyam Karmani Cha Grinihina.
Abhimanyu Sutam Suta Prahur Bhagavatotamam Tasya Janma Mahascharyam Karmani Chagrini Naha.
Ladies?
Abhimanyu Sutam Suta Prabhu Bhagavata Tamam Asya Janma Mahacharyam Karmani Cha Grihinina.
Abhimanyu Sutam Suta Prahur Bhagavatotamam Tasya Janma Mahascharyam Karmani Chagrinihina. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so now we do word for word. Sorry.
Asya Janma Mahascharyam Karmani Chagrinina. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Abhimanyu Shutam Shuta Rahur Bhagavatotamam Tasya Janma Nahascharyam Karmani Chagrinihinaha.
Okay, word for word. I get Mataji, yeah, there we go. I can't control that, so. Abhimanyu Sutam. Do I just do it? I guess I do. Abhimanyu Sutam, the son of Abhimanyu, Suta, O Suta, Prahuhu, is said to be Bhagava Uttamaha, the first class devotee of the Lord, Tasya, his, Janma, birth, Maha Ascharyam, very wonderful, Karmani, activities, Cha, and Granihi, please speak to, Naha, us. Translation, it is said that Maharaj Pariksha is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. So I just keep reading, I guess. By the way, this is Shonaka Rishi speaking. This is the spokesman for the sages at Naimisharanya. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The birth of Maharaj Parikshit is wonderful because in the womb of his mother, he was protected by the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. His activities are also wonderful because he chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. To kill cows means to end human civilization. He wanted to protect the cow from being killed by the great representative of sin. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death, which is wonderful for any mortal being, and thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on the bank of the Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. During all the days he heard Bhagavatam, he did not take food or drink, nor did he sleep a moment. So everything about him is wonderful, and his activities are worth hearing attentively. The desire is expressed herein to hear about him in detail. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Prabhupada uses the word wonderful in the purport a few times to describe Pariksha Maharaja's his birth, his activities, his passing away. So why right from his birth was it wonderful? To understand that, why don't we go back? Let's see, we're in 149. We'll look ahead in the first canto, chapter 12, Birth of Emperor Pariksha. Let's hear a little more about that birth so we can understand why it was so wonderful. In text 12, it says, thereupon, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would be exactly like him in prowess, took birth. Purport. According to, astronomical calculations of stellar influences upon a living being are not suppositions, but are factual, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Every living being is controlled by the laws of nature at every minute, just as a citizen is controlled by the influence of the state. The state laws are grossly observed, but the laws of material nature, being subtle to our gross understanding, cannot be experienced grossly. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3:9, every action of life produces another reaction, which is binding upon us. And only those who are acting on behalf of Yagya, Vishnu, are not bound by reactions. Our actions are judged by the higher authorities, the agents of the Lord, and thus we are awarded bodies according to our activities. The law of nature is so subtle that every part of our body is influenced by the respective stars, and a living being obtains his working body to fulfill his terms of imprisonment by the manipulation of such astronomical influence. A man's destiny is therefore ascertained by the birth time constellation of stars, and a factual horoscope is made by a learned astrologer. It is a great science, and misuse of a science does not make it useless. Maharaj Pariksha, or even the personality of Godhead, appear in certain constellations of good stars, and thus the influence is exerted upon the body, thus born at an auspicious moment. The most auspicious constellation of stars takes place during the appearance of the Lord in this material world, and it is specifically called Jayanti, a word not to be abused for any other purposes. Maharaj Pariksha was not only a great Kshatriya emperor, but also a great devotee of the Lord. Thus, he cannot take his birth at any inauspicious moment. As a proper place and time is selected to receive a respectable personage, so also to receive such a personality as Maharaj Pariksha, who was especially cared for by the Supreme Lord, a suitable moment is chosen when all good stars assembled together to exert their influence upon the king. Thus, he took his birth just to be known as the great hero of Srimad Bhagavatam. This suitable arrangement of astral influences is never a creation of man's will, but is the arrangement of the superior management of the agency of the Supreme Lord. Of course, the arrangement is made according to the good or bad deeds of the living being. Herein lies the importance of pious acts performed by the living being. Only by pious acts can one be allowed to get good wealth, good education, and beautiful features. The sanskars of the school of Sanatana Dharma, man's eternal engagement, are highly suitable for creating an atmosphere for taking advantage of good stellar influences. And therefore, Garbhadan Sanskar, or the first seedling purificatory process prescribed for the higher castes, is the beginning of all pious acts to receive a good, pious, and intelligent class of men in human society. There will be peace and prosperity in the world due to good and sane population. Only there is hell and disturbance only because of the unwanted, insane populace addicted to sex indulgence. So that's a little about the birth of Maharaj Parikshit. And as we're approaching Janmashtami and Vyasa Puja, we cannot but help think of Krishna's appearance and Prabhupada's appearance, which Prabhupada himself mentioned a bit, Krishna's appearance in the purport. Remember from reading from Krishna book, summary of the 10th canto, how as Krishna was about to appear, automatically every event in nature became auspicious, and the rivers were overflowing and the vegetation was lush, and the moon, even though it was waning, could not help but be full to celebrate the joyous occasion. And the next day was, and the next day on our calendar is Prabhupada's Advent Day. And Prabhupada himself told us that a chart was drawn up for him. And the astrologer said, Hukum chalbe, your order will be executed. I can't imagine who this astrologer was, but he saw that at the age of 70, this child will cross the ocean and he will start a religious movement, and it will be successful. Your order will be executed. So Parikshit Maharaj's birth was definitely auspicious. That was interesting, the way Prabhupada said in that purport, 1:12:12, that just as when someone is received, some great personality is received in a, even today, you know, they have receptions for world leaders, etc. So similarly, when Krishna appeared, the whole world got ready to receive Sri Krishna. And then in the purport, Prabhupada talks, he starts about the birth of Parikshit, and then he says, his activities are also wonderful because he chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. But let's look at that event, famous event. That's a little later in the first canto. It's chapter 16, how Parikshit received the age of Kali. And in the fourth text, we have this verse. Once, when Maharaj Parikshit was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Shudra, disguised as a king and herding the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. We can't help but think of today's leaders. Everybody's saying they want the best for the world and they want world peace. But, and even today when they're talking about eco-crises and climate change, nobody's talking about stopping cow slaughter. Although sometimes social commentators and even people from the medical community talk about how, you know, it'd really be good for the planet's health and for individuals' health if we cut down on meat consumption. But in Kali Yuga, it's all about money, and the consequences be damned. So the meat industry is a big industry, the mass slaughter of cows. So, but a real leader, he's going to chastise somebody who's hurting the cow. So let's look at the purport of this, 1:16:4. The purpose of a king's going out to conquer the world is not for self-aggrandizement. We can hardly imagine somebody being so powerful and so righteous that they could actually rule the world. But that's what the Vedic kings were. They were emperors, subduing all the other kings. Maharaj Parikshit went out to conquer the world after his ascendance to the throne. But this was not for the purpose of aggression on other states. He was the emperor of the world, and all small states were already under his regime. His purpose in going out was to see how things were going on in terms of the godly state. The king, being the representative of the Lord, has to execute the will of the Lord duly. There is no question of self-aggrandizement. Thus, as soon as Maharaj Parikshit saw that a lower class man in the dress of a king was hurting the legs of a cow and a bull, at once he arrested and punished him. The king cannot tolerate insults to the most important animal, the cow, nor can he tolerate disrespect for the most important man, the Brahmana. Human civilization means to advance the cause of Brahminical culture and to maintain it. Cow protection is essential. There is a miracle in milk. This is one of those lyrical purports where Prabhupada just starts exalting the glories of the cow and one of her go rasas, one of her products is milk. There is a miracle in milk, for it contains all the necessary vitamins to sustain human physiological conditions for higher achievements. Brahminical culture can advance only when man is educated to develop the quality of goodness. And for this, there is a prime necessity of food prepared with milk, fruits, and grains. Maharaj Parikshit was astonished to see that a black Shudra, dressed like a ruler, was mistreating a cow, the most important animal in human society. The age of Kali means mismanagement and quarrel. And the root cause of all mismanagement and quarrel is that worthless men with the modes of lower class men who have no higher ambition in life come to the helm of the state management. Such men at the post of a king are sure to first hurt the cow and the Brahminical culture, thereby pushing all society towards hell. Maharaj Parikshit, trained as he was, got the scent of this root cause of all quarrel in the world. Thus, he wanted to stop it in the very beginning. Just like when this pandemic started. There's many theories from the medical community. There's many conspiracy theories out there in cyberspace. But pretty much people who have studied the pandemic agree that the virus came from animals, like the so-called wet markets in Wuhan, China, for example. And then it jumps to humans because low-class humans are eating these kinds of animals like bats and other creatures. So it's kind of there's a through line going from man's mistreatment of animals all the way down to what we have today, where there's always, as Prabhupada puts it, hot and cold wars. There's always been a class of people who would eat meat, but in Vedic times, that was restricted to lower animals like goats. And you couldn't maintain a slaughterhouse. You had to go outside the precincts of the town. And then you would whisper in the goat's ear, Mangsa, now I am killing you. And in your next life, you will have a chance to kill me. So the idea of this is that after the person who's addicted to the taste of the animal's flesh does this for a time and chants the mantra, it should dawn on the person after a while that this is rather foolish of me, just for the sake of satisfying my tongue. I'm saying a mantra that's enabling this animal in another term of existence to come back and do the same thing to me. But we don't have this in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, people very often don't even understand that there is a next life, although Krishna is very clear in the Gita that even in this body we experience intra-life reincarnation. Tata dehantara praptiya. Dehi nosmin yata dehe komarang yovanang jara. That there's always a next life. Even in this life, there's always a next term of existence. The cells are always changing. I'm the same person I was in the womb, but now here I am 74 years old, and there's no cell in my body now that was there in the womb, but I was there. So who am I? I'm that unchanging witness, that Atma, that spirit soul. Even big professors, as Prabhupada used to say, alluding very often to his conversation with this professor in Moscow, Professor Grigory Kotovsky in June 71, some 50 years ago. The Russian devotees just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Prabhupada's appearance in Russia for those momentous 5 days when he was there, and he met, by Krishna's arrangement, that one interested person, Anatoly Pinyayev, who became Ananta Shanti. So Kotovsky, after hearing Prabhupada's presentation of Vaishnavism, because they were interested in all things Indian. Russia and India have this long-standing interest in each other. So, but Kotovsky was a Marxist-Leninist. So after Prabhupada's presentation, he said, Swamiji, after this body, everything's finished. So Prabhupada would say to us later, just see, big professor, he doesn't even understand that next life is always there. Tata dehantara, just as in this life we survive the changes of the body. So when the body becomes totally unlivable and unworkable, called death, then we go on to another term of existence based on the quality of our consciousness. So finally, Kotovsky wouldn't admit anything. Prabhupada was trying to use, Krishna's reason and logic from the Gita to help him understand something transcendent that he couldn't see, because he couldn't see the next life. But he was just appealing to the person's intelligence. And so finally, Prabhupada said, all right, well, admit this. You're taking your authority from Marx and Lenin. We take our authority from Krishna. So we both accept authority. Agreed? And he did agree. That was the one thing that Prabhupada nailed him on. But everything Kotovsky was saying was coming from a person or people, Marx and Lenin. So Prabhupada said, but we're following the perfect person, Krishna. So, Parikshit chastised Kali, but after all, it was the age of Kali about to come in. As soon as Krishna left the planet, it was Kali's time. So Kali said, well, you're going to spare my life and banish me, but I have no place to go in your kingdom. So then Parikshit gave him that concession. Wherever there is gambling and animal slaughter and prostitution, then you can go to those places, and where gold is being hoarded. And practically speaking, all the economies of the world run on vicious activities, like the revenue from gambling funds the schools, right? Oh, gambling's a good thing. This casino is a good thing, because then we can build schools and we can build infrastructure. But the whole thing is based on tamasic values. So what will people learn in these schools? As Prabhupada called them, slaughterhouse schools. Where will people go on these roads? They'll simply go to places where they can go under the golden arches and consume the 100 billionth, slaughter burger. But there is an eddy against this current in Kali Yuga. It's Lord Chaitanya's movement. And of course, Prabhupada being the latest and greatest representative of that movement, we're pushing back. We're pushing back against material intoxication, meat eating, gambling, the hoarding of gold, the the inequity of wealth all over the world. And then why also was Pariksha's life wonderful? Let's go back to the purport here. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death. So that's not common, which is wonderful for any mortal being. And thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on the bank of the Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. If people are told that they only have a year to live or 6 months to live, what will they do? Well, because ordinarily the values are sense gratification, they might want to finally do their dream trip. They might want to go see Niagara Falls, or go to Disney World, or go see the Grand Canyon. These are the meccas, the places of pilgrimage for the materialist. But the sane person, like Parikshit Maharaj, who right from his appearance in this world and his brief time on this planet, he passed away in his 20s. He got notice of his, he could have counteracted that curse, that there was going to be that to get bit by the snake bird would mean within a week he would pass away. So what did Parikshit Maharaj do? Okay, let me go to the Ganga and hear the transcendental activities of the Lord. And then Prabhupada says, during all the days he heard Bhagavatam, he did not take food or drink, nor did he sleep a moment. We're coming up to Janmashtami, so I was sharing with the devotees here in Bear, Delaware. I do this series called Lessons from His Leelas, based on the 8 times I saw Prabhupada. I have 6 lessons, and one was one time I got to experience Janmashtami and Vyas Puja in Prabhupada's presence. It was the famous time in 1972 at New Vrindavan, Bhagavat Dharma discourses. So on the night of Janmashtami, Prabhupada was there, and we'd been fasting all day. And then the arti was over, and we're all set to break the fast. We're famished. We're starving, right? So Prabhupada says, so there is Krishna book. Prabhupada wanted to hear about the advent of Lord Krishna. We had just gone through the midnight arti, and now Prabhupada's all ready to hear. We're all ready to eat, and Prabhupada's all ready to hear. So there is Krishna book, and our hearts sank, right? Because we're all very much in the bodily concept of life. And so Prabhupada, he had the sannyasis visiting, pass the Krishna book around, starting with the advent of Lord Krishna. And so this started at 12:30 a.m. And Prabhupada's sitting on his Vyasasana. And the sannyasis are passing the book around, the advent of the birth of Lord Krishna, well, prayers by the demigods for Lord Krishna in the womb. It was, they read quite a bit. And as the reading went on, Prabhupada is sitting up straighter and straighter, and he's being very expressive. And when something is read, his eyes are opening, and he's just really right there, with the Leela. Meanwhile, we're all against the wall, and we're becoming sleepier and sleepier. And then the sannyasis, they start falling asleep who are reading it, and their dandas are going down to the floor, and then they're bouncing up as they wake themselves up. It was quite a scene. 12:45, 1 a.m., 1:15, 1:30, and pretty much everybody is out cold, except for the reader and Prabhupada. And once in a while, I'd sort of snap to and survey the wreckage of us trying to hear. At 1:45, I remember this, seeing the clock at 1:45, Prabhupada, he said, okay, so he said something about Mother Yashoda, and then he said, I think you're becoming a little impatient, which was a very generous way to say that you're all completely out cold. You're becoming a little impatient. Take prasad. But practically we couldn't even do that because we were just out. Yes. But so Prabhupada, he was hearing like Pariksha was hearing, rapt attention. I mean, you can't even imagine it. Pariksha Maharaj, he said, hunger and thirst may disturb them, but I'm not going to budge. I'm not going to miss anything that you, Shukadeva Goswami, are going to say. And so for 7 days and nights he heard, and he became fully enlivened and realized, and he was ready. You know, when the snake bird, he could have counteracted that curse, but he's okay, let's do it. Let's go back to Godhead. He wasn't hanging on to his position as the world leaders often do, till as Prabhupada says, the fag end of life, and then death has to drag them off their seat. So he took that opportunity. Okay, what else? How does Prabhupada end the purport here? So everything about him is wonderful, and his activities are worth hearing attentively. The desire is expressed herein to hear about him in detail. So this is the last point I'd like to make, that Shaunaka Rishi is asking Sutta Goswami to tell them about Maharaj Pariksha, a great devotee. Now the Bhagavatam is the beautiful story of the personality of Godhead, Srimad Bhagavatam, but also is filled with the accounts of the lives of great devotees. Now that's very interesting, because the Lord is actually more pleased when we hear about people who are dear to him. Adi Purana, Prabhupada quotes in Nectar of Devotion, where Krishna says to Arjuna, one who says he's my devotee is not my devotee, but one who says he's a devotee of my devotee, he's my devotee. So similarly, in our ISKCON Sangha, we love to hear about Srila Prabhupada. Why? Because he's the one that's given us access to all these wonderful pastimes. Without Prabhupada, we have no access in a bona fide way to Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes. So Prabhupada wants us to read his books. At the same time, a great incentive to read Prabhupada's books is to read books about Prabhupada, which help us to understand the person who's written all these wonderful books for us, this whole library of Krishna literature. Because when people read a book, they naturally want to know more about the writer. It's just human nature. It's just natural. So when we read the Leelamrita, or we read the great transcendental adventure of Prabhupada in Australia, or we read Prabhupada's disciples in Germany, or we read When the Sun Shines, Ranchar Prabhu's account of Prabhupada and the devotees opening up Britain, or we read Yogeshwara's kind of biography of Prabhupada for the 50th anniversary. It was called Swami in a Strange Land. It's so relishable to hear about Prabhupada. And Prabhupada is the one who created this whole infrastructure of ISKCON. Just like I was stranded at O'Hare Airport a few days ago, last Saturday. And so I contacted Krishna Kirtan here in Delaware, and I said, Prabhu, I can't come today because they've canceled the flight, and I'm even stranded here in O'Hare. Can you help me out? He said, well, that's okay, Prabhu. I have a friend in Naperville, Illinois, south of Chicago. There's a devotee community there. And I will text him and let him know where you are, and you guys can connect, and he'll rescue you. Sure enough, he did. And I spent a couple of days, because American could not get me on a flight for a couple of days. So I spent 2 wonderful days in Naperville, Illinois, and I spent Balaram Purnim there, and I got to address the devotees there in Balaram Purnim. It was total serendipity. You know, I had no idea I was going there. So this is all because of what Prabhupada did. Wherever you travel in the world, if you ever get in a jam, or you ever things don't go the way they're supposed to go, which is not uncommon in Kali Yuga, you're probably not going to be far from a devotee, even if there's no temple there, because devotees are just all over the world. And when Prabhupada left us, there were 108 temples. There were about less than 5,000 initiated devotees. And now we have, so many multiple times that many temples and so many more devotees. So this is the great ISKCON ashram, ISKCON Sangha that Prabhupada created. It's ever expanding. And we owe it all to his divine grace. So we'll be celebrating Krishna's appearance. But the biggest day of the year in ISKCON is really the next day. It's the appearance of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is on a level not different from Pariksha Maharaj, who was also very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. So I'm going to read the verse again, and if anyone has any questions, reflections, please bless us with your input. The verse again, it is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please, Shonika is saying, please tell us about him. Okay, Prabhus, fire away.
I don't know how to raise my hand, Suresvara, but I have a comment.
This is Vishnu Gada, Prabhu?
No, Tattvavid.
Tattvavid! Wow, Hare Krishna. Please.
I'm sitting in the Philadelphia temple.
Good.
So, Srimad Bhagavatam at the beginning tells us that the Bhagavatam will uproot all the material miseries of the living entity. And we know that the miseries come from, there are three types they come from: other living entities and material nature and the devas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the frame I want to make my comment in. You were discussing a bit about the theory that the miseries that afflicted the world during the pandemic originated through the animal species, and that the disease somehow jumped. But I strongly disagree. And I think that it's more likely that human cheating was involved, in that the virus originated in the Wuhan lab and accidentally came out. So I just wanted to go on record. But in the frame,
Let's speak Tattvavid. Well, whether that's, to me, that's a detail. But the fact is, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your point.
Well, I framed it. I framed it within the context of the Bhagavatam. We're talking about material miseries and how they come about and how to eradicate them.
Mm-hmm.
So, the fact that there may have been human error or even human manipulation and diabolic. The funding of the Wuhan lab came from the National Institute of Health. So America might have been in bed with China on that. Those kinds of things. I think those kinds of things also can be taken into consideration.
Yeah, the thing is that whatever actually happened, ahankara vimudhatma, people, even if there is a conspiracy of, America and China, what have you, Krishna is the bigger cheater, and he will cheat the cheaters, and they too will come down with a virus, or they too will, of course, everybody gets old, sick, and dies. There was an interesting take on the virus from Madhavananda Prabhu Did he actually take Diksha from Prabhupada or Gaur Govinda Maharaj? I forget.
Gaur Govinda, first Ramaswara.
Okay, right, that's right. So he's been based in Puri for some time. He moved to Puri, he and his wife. So he was asking sadhus in Puri about, what is this? What's going on here? Can you give us some insight astrologically or Shastra or whatever? So the sadhu that he was speaking with said, Prabhu, this is all, it's the consensus of the sadhus here in Puri is that it's all due to animal slaughter. That because Kali is the animal slaughter keeps multiplying in Kali Yuga, people will have to be slaughtered one way or another by war or virus or, earthquakes, the climate, all this stuff. But it's all because of man's inhumanity to animals. And Prabhupada writes about this, as you well know, Tattvavid, in Bhagavatam purports too. As long as humanity continues to mistreat its, less endowed brothers and sisters, the animal kingdom, and the plants, slaughtering the trees to graze cows or to print nonsense literature Prabhupada talks about in these first canto purports, it will have to be slaughtered. Look what just happened yesterday, at outside the airport in Kabul. So much loss of life when suicide bombers came and 13 Marines got blown up and scores of Afghanis desperately trying to get out of the country, and then more people at the hotel adjoining the airport. This is all because of the nefarious activities, yes, of human beings. So whether it's manipulated one way or the other, Krishna says in the Gita, Dyutang Chaliyatam Asmi, I'm also the gambling of cheats. And in that purport, Prabhupada says, Krishna, if you want to cheat, Krishna can be a bigger cheater and cheat you. So without getting into the never-ending conspiracy theories, we should just remember the main point is that Krishna's in charge, and he will let this thing go on, as long as he wants.
Yeah, I second what the pundits in Puri said, that animal slaughter may be in the background as a cause, and also abortion, widespread abortion.
Sure, abortion, cow slaughter, just the way we treat.
I've also had that opinion that because you kill a cow and then the cow gets a chance to come back and kill you in another life, and it just becomes like really a tangle. I thought maybe that's also a reason for all these what do they call them, the killings in school where there's mass shooting. They have a quick name for those things, when there's
mass shootings.
Mass shootings, yeah. What could that be? That could be the guy becomes deranged. He has a gun and he goes and kills a bunch of people because in his previous life he was killed by them. Maybe he was reincarnated to kill them.
Sure. Of course, we sympathize with the victims, but then, yes, there's always a zoom out to see the big picture. All we see is these little tiny pieces of time that we don't see the causes. So sure, all these things, all these, as Prabhupada puts, anomalies, mass shootings, and it just gets worse and worse. And, and a lot of people celebrated when number 45, who finally got voted out of office. But what's the motive of getting, the motive of the leaders, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or communists or capitalists, is sense gratification. So the people who are working day and night to try to find, more cures for the new variants and give booster shots and all this, what's the motive? The motive is to still enjoy the material world. Yeah, that's the motive. As long as that's the paradigm, humanity is just going to keep suffering. There's no end to it. You're sitting in Philly, let's see, when was it? It was 1984. So that's 16 and 21 is 37. 37 years ago, to write a piece for BTG called You Can Talk of Peace Till the Cows Come Home, I visited a slaughterhouse in Sutterton, north of Philly, the biggest slaughterhouse east of the Mississippi River, the biggest cow slaughterhouse. My wife and I visited there, and it was very obvious from observing the mechanized slaughter. They were killing 100 cows an hour, and the tour. I mean, they have a tour guide, right? It's so Kali Yuga, or the personality of Kali. He was fearing for his life back in the day with Pariksha Maharaj, but now Kali's so brazen. They have a PR department, right, connected to the slaughterhouse, and when people want to see the slaughterhouse, they give tours. So I never forget the tour guide. She said to us, "Would you like to take the tour with or without the kill?" In other words, would you like to actually see the cows killed? And I knew that to get the full measure of the horror of cow slaughter, I was going to have to do this tapasya and see it. And so we saw how they did it. And I saw the guy that was, and they rotate these people because they go mad after a while. The guy that was actually pulling the trigger on this sliding bolt pistol, which stuns, right between the eyes. And forgive me, this is horrible. And then rendering the cow so-called brain dead. He could have just as easily turned around, and if he had, a gun with bullets, he could have just as easily killed us, because his eyes were like gleaming black pools, and he was just, all the humanity was just burned out of him. So 100 cows an hour, this was, it's multiple, it's more now. It's crazy. So how long can humanity keep raping Mother Earth for the oil through the drill? And how long can the cows continue to be slaughtered? How long can the babies continue to be aborted? That's why periodically, even if you don't have so-called world wars, you used to have these horrible events to blow off some karma. Prabhupada writes about this in the 10th canto. These the wars that are fought these days are not righteous wars. They're not dharma yuddha like Kurukshetra or Ramayana, Ram Ravana. They're just, Krishna is assembling demons under the banners of different nations, and he just lets the slaughter go. So yeah, it's up to him how long this will go on, but I don't see it stopping anytime soon, frankly. Okay, Tattva, nice to hear you. Let's see if anybody else has something to.
Yeah, Vishnu Prabhu, and then Mother Sudevi.
Okay. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have to cut it at 9 because I got to move on.
Okay. I noticed in the purport, in the verse, the verse is it said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord. But it seems like this was after Parikshit Maharaj's disappearance. So could you comment on that? I never noticed that before, but it's kind of stood out to me for some reason today.
Oh, well, I'd have to go. That's true with the sequence? I know it's true. Prabhupada said you can't always understand Bhagavatam sequentially, linearly. Let's say that's true, what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's eternal and he's a great devotee of the Lord. So.
Okay. I found it interesting. I didn't know.
Yeah, I don't have any other insight into that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Sudevi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I
Mom.
joined a little late when you are talking about the Janmashtami celebration and Krishna book reading. Was that the first Janmashtami?
Which
you're
one?
Talking about?
It was
The
1972, New Vrindavan. You can go online and type in Google, type in 1972 Srila Prabhupada New Vrindavan Vyasa Puja address, and you will hear Prabhupada's address of how he addressed the VIPs the next day, because the occasion, the reason Prabhupada came to that Janmashtami Vyas Puja in 72 in New Vrindavan was because I think it was Rupanuga Prabhu was commenting to Prabhupada that, you know, the Hare Krishna movement is 6 years old and they see us on the street corners, but they don't really understand us. They just think we're some, you know, weird curiosity. And even though we've been distributing books now, they just think we're strange. So Prabhupada said, oh, we'll invite them to New Vrindavan. We'll have Bhagavat Dharma discourse. And Prabhupada had already done this, events like this in India under the same banner. But he decided it was time that influencers, as they say nowadays, you know, like journalists and politicians and scholars should be invited to hear Prabhupada give discourses. So the last week in August, and then there was a break for Janmashtami Vyas Puja, but then the first week in September, Prabhupada gave these discourses at this makeshift pavilion the devotees built on the top of Bahulaban farm mountain. And Prabhupada spoke, and it was pretty amazing. And the New York Times came, and Mother Earth News, and WWVA Wheeling, West Virginia, and KDKA Pittsburgh, and who else came? The local congressman came. People came. There was about 900 devotees and about 100 guests. And it was quite an event. It was, you know, cast of hundreds, and I'll never forget arriving there from Pittsburgh. I was serving in Pittsburgh at the time, and we got there one day a little late to hear the discourse, but they were taking Prabhupada down the hill from Prabhupada on a palanquin from the pavilion, and to get him in a car to go to what we used to call Madhuban, so he could stay in the cabin. He was staying in a little cabin. And just to see that scene, the sun was kind of low in the sky, and the cows were there, and the hundreds of guests, and the pink dust was in the air. It was kind of like something out of the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada's sitting in this palanquin, very humbly accepting the ride. And it was like a spectacular movie. And then Prabhupada just continued with those discourses, and then Janmashtami Vyas Puja, a lot of events happened there. So 72, you might even be able to hear Vishnujan Maharaj doing a kirtan. I think that's part of the video. Because on Vyasa Puja Day, we were all waiting for Prabhupada up the pavilion to honor him for Vyasa Puja. And Vishnujan Maharaj was leading us in one of these heavenly Vishnujan kirtans. I remember the tune too. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the deities he was traveling with, Radha Damodar, they were sitting on the stage, and there were Jagannath deities that had come from, I think, Lake Huntington or Baltimore, I forget. So anyway, we were just in Swarga, we were in heaven, you know, hearing and chanting with Vishnujan. And then Prabhupada came in Hayagriva's little yellow Volkswagen, and he came up the dirt road, and he came behind the scarlet Vyasasan. He hopped up on the seat, and he just picked up his kartals and he started following with us, Vishnujan's lead. And then at one point, when Vishnujan was supposed to start the mantra again, you know, call and response, Prabhupada stole the lead. He stole the lead. All of a sudden we heard over the microphone Prabhupada's voice, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And we went wild. We went absolutely mad. As soon as Prabhupada started leading, involuntarily, we rose from the ground and we just started moving toward Prabhupada. And it was like Prabhupada and Radha Damodar were opening up the spiritual sky and flooding the place with Krishna praying. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what hit us. And then Prabhupada finally brings the kirtan to a close with the Jai Om prayer. Jai Om Vishnupad. And we just dropped to the grass and we were swooning. We did not know what hit us, but Prabhupada and Radha Damodar were giving us a taste of Goloka consciousness, Krishna praying. It was so many things like that happened in Prabhupada's presence. So I suggest you go online and type that in and see if you can relive it. At least you're going to hear Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja address, which he was giving to the guests, because Prabhupada had his hand in his bead bag. You can hear flies buzzing around the mic and cows mooing in the background. And the first thing Prabhupada says is, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for coming to this Vyasa Puja celebration. Of course, those who are my students, they know what is this Vyasa Puja, but others may wonder why this person is receiving all honors, sitting on a throne in egalitarian America. They wanted to hear what the Swami had to say. And Prabhupada just demystified the guru. He compared the guru to a mailman, post-peon, and then to, a child, and then to a dog. He said, I'm the dog of God. He just did a beautiful job of helping these skeptical people understand that a guru he's just a representative of God. So, okay, Prabhus, thank you for inviting me.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
And have a great Janmashtami Vyasa Puja. We're going to have one here in little old Bear, Delaware, at our local temple. And hope you all get recharged for the year. This is kind of like, our Christmas in a sense. This is when Krishna appeared. And then Prabhupada, what a sign from Krishna, huh? Prabhupada appears on Nandotsava the very next day when everybody's celebrating Krishna's appearance with Nanda Maharaj at the place of Nanda Maharaj. So hope you all get refreshed, enlivened, and see you again sometime.
Thank you so much, Suresvara Prabhu. It was a real pleasure to have you with us this morning. Truly a gift. I wish you a very happy Janmashtami and Vyasa Puja as well.
Thank you.
And we hope that to have your association sometime in the near future.
Yes, hope to get yours too. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.